Hey, y'all, I'm Noah Huisman. I'm a lawyer, writer, podcaster, fitness enthusiast, and all things health and wellness. Catch me on this week's episode of The Jesse T Show.
Noah Huisman, welcome to The Jesse T Show, brother.
Great to be here, man.
Man, what a great time for you and all the things you have going on in the world. And just for some color and some context, you and I connected a couple months back in Austin when I went down there to visit CJ Finley, one of your good friends, and you do a lot of stuff with him. And you and I connected, and we were like, man, we got to talk about the things that you're doing. So here it is, man.
Yeah. It's been percolating in the back of my mind, and so I've been making sure that I have good enough material to talk about and plenty of stuff to talk about, especially with the book launching here pretty quickly, and then have some other things since we last spoke actually that have sort of started, launched, and taken off. So looking forward to talking about it all.
Brother, we're going to get into it. And I definitely want to, just commend you on all that you've been doing, because I've been watching you from afar on social media and getting into your ongoings, and you've been a busy boy, man. So talk to us a little bit about before all of these things that you have going on now. What led you to today? Who are you? What made you you? What brought you to today?
Yeah. So I'll give the quick synopsis. So I grew up in Iowa, went to college in South Dakota, went to law school in Minneapolis, lived in Minneapolis for 7 years, practiced law there for 4.5 years before I moved here to Austin last January. Corporate attorney, mergers and acquisitions, venture capital, sort of the type of lawyer you think about when you think about the people that are in the office for 70 to 80 hours a week, constantly on call, never really have any weekends or time off. And so it was a grind for 4 years. I actually left that law firm at the end of November, which I'm sure we'll talk about later when we get to talking about the book. But right around COVID, like when COVID first hit, like 2 years ago at this point, almost 2 years ago at this point, is like March of 2020, I believe. It forced a lot of folks, as it did me, to sort of sit with themselves and the decisions they'd made for their life and sort of the trajectory they were on and whether or not they wanted to stay on that trajectory. I love the practice of law, but I just realized that it was killing my soul. All of the things and passions that I had held dear, whether it was, writing, music, dancing, whatever, family, all of those things that I said I prioritized or said I loved have sort of were pushed to the fringes of my life. And so I started to think about what my life would look like if I pursued my dreams relentlessly and stopped letting this soul-sucking thing take the best pieces of me. And so kind of made it an intentional decision to start prioritizing the things that fed me. And so with that, one of the first things I did is I started a podcast with a buddy up in Minneapolis that we were rolling before I moved down to Austin. And then we pressed pause when I moved down here. But I started that podcast. And then on that podcast, as I'm sure you can identify with, you catch yourself talking about sort of similar wants, desires, wishes over and over again. I'll be like, oh man, that sounds great. I can't wait to do that one day. One of those things for me that I talked about over and over again was owning a gym. I knew that was something I always wanted to do. I played college football. And so that health and wellness, fitness space has always been something near and dear to my heart. Especially on the recovery side. I had my fair share of injuries: reconstructed shoulder, broken back, sports hernia, broken hand, concussions. So the recovery component became very special to me, especially with sort of neurodegenerative diseases in my familial history. Sort of finding those methods to delay and or prevent sort of Alzheimer's or just neurodegenerative conditions generally. So anyway, connected with a guy in Minneapolis and took my bonus check from that year. And instead of sort of dumping it, into an ETF like any smart person would do, 6 months into the pandemic, I decided to use it to purchase a few mobile saunas and some ice tubs to start this gym in Minneapolis. So, like objectively, probably the worst time in history to start a gym when like gyms weren't even really allowed to be open. But it's one of those things I did for myself, much like the book, of like created this thing that I had wanted, which was this recovery center. I jokingly call it the rehab lab, but it's where I would go all the time. And it kept me sane. And it kept me motivated and it kept me rejuvenated. And so it wasn't like that was in September of 2020. And then sort of as I felt myself come back to life each time I sort of poured into a passion, it made me start to experiment even more. And so that was when I moved. Then I got to thinking, and I moved to Austin January 2021 and had the good fortune to meet CJ and a bunch of the good energy that's just in Austin.
It's amazing. It's incredible.
Yeah. And it's Austin is one of those places. I've been asked frequently about why I love Austin so much or what I think makes it such a special place. And if I had to encapsulate it in a sentence, it is truly I believe a place you come to establish a relationship with the person you want to be. Now, I'm not saying you can't find that other places, but for me as an individual who sort of felt like I had buried sort of the playful person that had a voice and sort of stifled and suffocated myself, to come to Austin and then have that pulled out of me by people who refuse to let me settle for anything less than I could be,
Yes.
was an absolutely amazing phenomenon. As somebody who historically didn't share many details about my life, and then the last year and a half, being around CJ and some of the other folks here who have encouraged me to share more and more, it's just been a fantastic ride. And then that's the process that sparked sort of extracting this book out of me and sort of getting me to a situation where I'm going to be publishing a book here in the next few weeks. So beautiful. That's I know you said a short get what got you to where we are today, but that's a little bit of a longer version.
No, that's amazing. And I love to dive into so many pieces of that, from the biohacking to the background to the, the move and being in Austin. And I want to start with being in Austin because Austin has been calling on my heart for years. And it's really interesting because, I was drawn to Austin years ago just by a conference they were holding. And it's amazing how your soul knows, like your soul, if you really listen and you I know you're big into stoicism, which we'll talk about, but if you listen to your intuition and you're clear of mind and you're true with what your thoughts and your feelings are, you can really tap into like what you're meant to do. And for me, Austin called on me so many times for so many reasons. For back in the day, it was South by Southwest and guys that I was following like Gary Vee and Tim Ferriss and like all these different people were like, yeah, I want to go be around that scene. And the startup scene had been like, it was labeled the new Silicon Valley kind of thing, like all these things. And I was like, this is really cool. But then I started getting really deep into my spirituality and come guys like Aubrey Marcus and Kyle Kingsbury and Joe Rogan and all these, and Joe Rogan lives there now and he's bringing a whole comedy scene, the best comedians in the world to come into Austin. And it's like, there's something magical in Austin. And for me, when I was there, I felt like I was home and I spent a long weekend there and it was like I was coming home and meeting people like you and CJ, a gal, Nicole Lano and Dr. Alex Mosley. Sorry, I met her with CJ. So like all these people. And one thing I found in common down there is people just seem happier. People seem happier. Facts. People are, for me, it's a hodgepodge of like very high functioning spiritual people that are into entrepreneurship, that are into health and wellness, that are into relationships, that love good food, love music. I mean, it's a scene down there, man. It's incredible.
It is incredible. I'll hit on a few things of that. One, it just your intuition telling you things. I 100% could not agree more. I think that especially in an age where the world spins faster and faster, it's not that our soul isn't leading us, it's that we're not listening.
Yes.
And it becomes easier and easier in an age of distraction to sort of drown that voice out, and harder to justify taking time because you feel like you're not making progress or you're falling behind. But there are those little tugs that if you just witness yourself, I'm a firm believer in, because people ask me all the time, like, oh, what brought you to Austin? And I'm like, intuition.
Yeah.